I destroyed it. All of it. The scooter, the trust, whatever was left of my pride, $40,000 in custom parts, gone. Because I couldn't stand the thought of him touching what was mine. But the worst part? She wasn't even surprised. She just looked at me like she'd been waiting for it all along. My name is Lawrence. I'm 67 years old. I spent 42 years as a mechanical engineer in Calgary, building things, fixing things, understanding how pieces fit together. I was good at it. Real good. But after Linda died 3 years ago, nothing fit together anymore. The house felt too big. The winters felt colder. Every corner had a memory I wasn't ready to face. So I sold everything, took my pension, bought a one-way ticket to Chiang Mai. People said I was running away. Maybe they were right. I told myself I was starting over. There's a difference between those two things. At least I thought there was. I found a small place near the old city, nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, a little balcony where I could watch the monks walk by in the mornings. But the real prize was the garage space I rented 2 blocks away. That's where I kept the Lambretta, a 1972 model, rare as hell. I'd been hunting for one since I was 25. Found it in pieces from a collector in Bangkok who didn't know what he had. Paid $8,000 for the frame and engine. That was just the beginning. Over 2 years, I poured everything into it. Custom metalwork from a guy in Italy, hand-painted panels, vintage chrome, a leather seat I stitched myself because no one else could get it right, $40,000. Maybe more. I stopped counting after a while. The garage became my church. I'd wake up at 5, brew coffee, and work until noon. The expat crew would stop by. Guys like me, divorced, widowed, starting over. We'd talk about carburetors and compression ratios and pretend we weren't all hiding from something. Tom, a Brit who restored old Triumphs. Hank, an American who couldn't stop talking about his ex-wife but could rebuild a gearbox blindfolded. Good guys, quiet guys. We didn't need to say much. The work spoke for itself. But lately, the garage felt emptier. The scooter was nearly done, and when I'd finish for the day, I'd go back to my apartment and sit on that balcony alone. I'd think about Linda, how we used to sit on our deck in Calgary with wine and watch the sunset, how she'd laugh at my terrible jokes, how she knew exactly when to talk and when to just sit with me in silence. I missed that. I missed her, and I was starting to think maybe I was ready to let someone in again, not to replace her. You can't replace 40 years. But maybe to share the space she left behind. That's when I met Sassiwan. It was a Tuesday morning at a cafe near the old city. I'd stopped in for iced coffee, and she was at the next table with a book in English, something about Thai history. I didn't plan to talk to her, but my phone fell off the table, and she picked it up before I could. "Here you go," she said, smiling. Her English was clear, confident. I thanked her. She asked if I lived nearby. I told her about the garage, about the scooter. Her face lit up. "My father used to fix motorbikes in Lampang," she said. "He died when I was 19. I missed the smell of the garage, the sound of engines. I knew right then I was in trouble." Her name was Sasiwan, 31 years old, worked part-time at a tourist shop selling silk scarves and wooden elephants. She had this laugh that made me feel 20 years younger. Easy, light, like she wasn't carrying anything heavy. We talked for an hour. She asked about Calgary, about Linda, about why I came to Thailand. I told her the truth, that I was tired of being cold, tired of being alone. She nodded like she understood. "Sometimes we need to be far away to feel close to ourselves again," she said. I didn't know if that made sense, but I liked the way it sounded. We started meeting more often. She'd swing by the cafe on her lunch breaks, bring me pad thai or som tam, ask about the scooter. I'd show her photos on my phone, the custom paint job, the chrome exhaust I'd polished for 3 hours straight. She'd lean in close, studying the details. "You really love this." she said one day. Yeah, I told her. It's the only thing that makes sense anymore. She touched my hand. Just for a second, but I felt it for the rest of the day. After a few weeks, she started coming to the garage. She'd sit on an old stool in the corner and watch me work. Didn't talk much, just watched. I liked that. Linda used to do the same thing when I'd work on our old Chevy in the driveway. There was something intimate about it, being comfortable enough to just be there. One afternoon, I was explaining engine compression, how the piston moves, how the fuel ignites, technical stuff. Most people's eyes glaze over. But Sassiwan listened, asked questions. So it's like breathing, she said. The engine breathes? I smiled. Yeah, exactly like that. She smiled back. And for the first time since Linda died, I felt like maybe I wasn't completely alone. I didn't think much about the age gap. 36 years. That's a lifetime. But when I was with her, it didn't feel like math. It felt natural. She never treated me like I was old. Never talked down to me or acted like I needed help. And I didn't treat her like a kid. She was smart, thoughtful. She'd lived a life too. Lost people. Struggled. We had that in common. Pain doesn't care about your age. It just sits there until you figure out what to do with it. One evening, after I'd finished working on the throttle, she asked if she could sit on the scooter. It's not done yet, I said. I know, she said, but I just want to feel it. Just for a second. I helped her onto the seat, showed her where the throttle was, the brake. She laughed, holding the handlebars like a kid on Christmas morning. This is beautiful, Lawrence, she said. It's like art, but art you can ride. I stood there watching her, and something shifted inside me. I realized I didn't just want to finish the scooter anymore. I wanted to finish it for her, to share it with her. She leaned forward and kissed me, soft, quick, but real, and I knew I was already in deeper than I'd planned to be. After that, she started spending more time at my place. She'd bring groceries, cook dinner. We'd sit on the balcony and watch the sun go down over the mountains. She'd rest her head on my shoulder, and I'd think about how long it had been since I'd felt this kind of peace. One night, she called the scooter our baby. I liked that. Maybe too much. It felt like we were building something together. Not just the bike, but a life, a future. I started buying her things. A helmet in her favorite color. Blue, like the sky. Riding gloves. A leather jacket that fit her perfectly. She was grateful, always grateful. She'd hug me tight and say, "You're too good to me, Lawrence." But then the requests started. Small at first. Her rent was late. Could I help? Of course I could. Her mother in Lampang needed medicine. Could I send money? Of course. A visa issue. She needed to renew her passport. Expensive, but I didn't hesitate. It felt good to be needed, to be useful. After Linda died, I felt useless, like my purpose had died with her. But Sassiwan made me feel like I mattered again, like I was building something, protecting something. I told myself this was what love looked like, taking care of someone, being there when they needed you. But late at night, when she was asleep and I was lying awake, a small voice in the back of my mind would ask, "Is this love, or are you just useful?" I'd push the thought away. Tell myself I was overthinking it, that I was damaged from losing Linda and couldn't recognize real connection anymore. But the voice didn't go away. It just got quieter, easier to ignore. Then Crit showed up. I noticed Sasiwan texting more. At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone texts. But she'd smile at her phone, laugh softly, and when I'd ask who it was, she'd say, "Just a friend." One afternoon, I was in the garage tightening the brake cables when a young Thai guy walked in, mid-20s, confident. Good-looking in that effortless way young guys are. He walked straight to the scooter like he owned the place. "This is the famous Lambretta," he said in English. His accent was light. Practiced. I'm Crit. He stuck out his hand. I shook it. His grip was firm, too firm. Sassiwan told me about it. I had to see it for myself. I work on bikes too, over in Lampang. Sassiwan walked in behind him. She'd been outside on her phone. She smiled when she saw us. Crit, this is Lawrence, she said. Lawrence, Crit, and I grew up in the same village. Crit walked around the scooter, touching the chrome, inspecting the paint job. Beautiful work, he said. How much you spend on this? I didn't answer. Sassiwan jumped in. Lawrence has been working on it for 2 years. It's almost done. Crit nodded, ran his hand over the seat. My seat, the one I'd stitched. You should bring it to Lampang when it's finished, he said. We could ride together. Sassiwan could show you the mountains. He looked at her when he said it. She looked back, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. After Crit left, I asked Sassiwan who he was. Just a friend, she said. We grew up together. I told you. You didn't tell me he was coming, I said. She sighed. Lawrence, he just wanted to see the scooter. You're always talking about it. I thought you'd like showing it off. I don't like showing it off to him, I said. She stared at me. Why not? I didn't have a good answer. Just a feeling. A bad one. Forget it, I said. She kissed my cheek. You're being paranoid. Maybe I was. But the feeling didn't go away. Over the next few weeks, I watched her. I hated that I did, but I couldn't stop. She was on her phone constantly, texting, smiling. I'd ask who it was, and she'd say, work, friends, my mom. But her tone was off, defensive. One night I woke up and she was on the balcony, talking in Thai, low, almost whispering. When she came back to bed, I pretended to be asleep. She didn't say anything, just lay there, and I could feel the space between us growing. The jealousy was eating me alive. I'd never been a jealous man, not with Linda, not with anyone. But this was different. I felt old, out of place. Crit was young, local, spoke her language, understood her culture. I was just some foreign guy with money and a scooter. What did I really have to offer? I'd lie awake at night thinking about him, about them, wondering if she laughed with him the way she used to laugh with me, wondering if I'd already lost her and just didn't know it yet. Finally, the scooter was finished. 2 years of work, $40,000, countless hours, and it was perfect. The chrome gleamed under the garage lights. The engine purred like a cat. The custom seat fit like it was molded from my body. I called Sassiwan, told her to come see it. She said she'd be there in an hour. I waited, cleaned every surface, polished every piece of chrome. I wanted her to see it the way I did, as something beautiful, something we could share. She showed up 2 hours late, walked in looking at her phone. Sorry, she said. Traffic. I didn't say anything, just gestured to the scooter. She looked at it. Wow, she said, but her tone was flat, distracted. You want to take a ride? I asked. She checked her phone. Maybe later. I have to meet my friend for dinner. What friend? I asked. Just someone from work, she said. She kissed me on the cheek. I'm proud of you, Lawrence. It looks great. Then she left, and I stood there alone with the scooter, feeling like I'd just shown my masterpiece to someone who couldn't care less. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Sassiwan breathe beside me. She was smiling in her sleep. I wondered what she was dreaming about. I wondered if it was me. Or him. I got up, went to the kitchen. Her phone was on the counter, charging. The screen lit up with a message from Crit. I told myself not to look, told myself to trust her. But my hands were already picking it up. The message was in Thai. I opened Google Translate, typed it in. That was fun tonight. Your foreigner still doesn't know? My chest tightened. I scrolled up. More messages. Photos. One of them made my blood stop. Sasiwan. On my scooter. With Crit, his arm around her. Both smiling. The scooter parked outside some bar I'd never seen. She'd taken it. Without asking. Let him touch it. Ride it. Maybe more. I stood there shaking. The phone felt like it was burning my hand. I heard the shower turn off. She was coming. I put the phone back. Tried to breathe. She walked into the kitchen in a towel, hair wet. You okay? She asked. No, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. I saw the photo. Her face changed. Just for a second. Then she smiled. What photo? Don't, I said. Don't lie to me anymore. She sighed, crossed her arms. Lawrence, I borrowed the scooter for a few hours. Crit wanted to see it. It's not a big deal. You took it without asking. I said. You let him ride it. He didn't ride it, she said. We just took a photo. I don't believe you, I said. She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled her eyes. You're being paranoid. Controlling. It's just a scooter, Lawrence. It's not just a scooter, I said. My voice was rising. It's 2 years of my life. $40,000. And you took it. Behind my back. With him. She stared at me. You care more about that bike than you do about me. That's not true, I said. Isn't it? She said. You spend more time in that garage than you do with me. Maybe if you paid attention, you'd know I'm not happy. Then why are you still here? I asked. She didn't answer. Just grabbed her phone and walked out. The door slammed, and I was alone. I went to the garage. Stood there staring at the scooter. It looked different now. Tainted. Like something stolen. I thought about Crit's hands on it. Sassiwan's lies. The money. The time. The loneliness I'd tried to fill with chrome and leather. And something inside me broke. Not cracked. Broke. I opened a bottle of whiskey I kept in the corner. Drank straight from it. Sat on the floor. Stared at the bike. It stared back. I don't know how long I sat there. An hour. Maybe 2. But the whiskey was half gone, and my head was spinning, and all I could see was that photo. Her smiling. Him touching her. My scooter. My life. My stupid, desperate attempt to matter to someone again. Walked over to the scooter. You want to take it? I said out loud. To no one. To her. To myself. Take it. I smashed the left mirror. The glass shattered. Fell to the concrete floor like pieces of my stupid heart. Then the right mirror. Then the headlight. The chrome dented under the wrench. I grabbed a hammer. Smashed the custom tank. The one I'd hand-painted. The one I'd spent 60 hours on. The paint chipped. The metal bent. I ripped off the side panels. Threw them across the garage. Kicked the frame until my foot ached. The seat I'd stitched myself. I tore it. Ripped the leather until my hands bled. The speedometer. Gone. The exhaust. Dented. The engine. I couldn't bring myself to destroy the engine, but everything else. Everything I'd built. I destroyed it. I was crying. Screaming. I don't even know what I was saying. Just sounds. Animal sounds. The kind that come from somewhere deep and dark and broken. And when I finally stopped, when my arms were too tired to lift the hammer anymore, I looked at what I'd done. $40,000. 2 years. Gone. The scooter was unrecognizable. A pile of broken metal and shattered dreams. And I felt nothing. Just emptiness. Just the echo of my own breathing in the silent garage. I sat down on the floor, put my head in my hands, and I thought about Linda, how she would have stopped me, how she would have held me and said, "It's just a thing, Lawrence. It's not worth this." But Linda was gone, and I was here, alone. with the wreckage of everything I'd tried to build. I stayed there until the sun came up, until my body ached and my head throbbed and I had no tears left. Then I locked the garage and went home. Sassiwan wasn't there. I didn't expect her to be. I showered, changed, sat on the balcony and watched the monks walk by like I did every morning. But nothing felt the same. Nothing felt real. I kept waiting to feel regret, or relief, or anything. But there was just this hollow space where my chest used to be. The next morning, she showed up. I heard the garage door open, heard footsteps. I was sitting on the floor next to the ruined scooter, staring at it like maybe if I looked long enough it would put itself back together. She walked in, stopped, stared at the wreckage. I waited for her to yell, to cry, to show me something real, but she just stood there. Then she said, "You really did it. I didn't think you would." I looked up at her. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "I knew you'd break eventually. Guys like you always do." "Guys like me," I repeated. "Old, lonely, desperate," she said. Not mean, not angry, just matter of fact, like she was describing the weather. "You give everything, then you lose it when you realize it was never enough." I stood up. My knees cracked. "Was it ever real?" I asked. She looked at me. "Does it matter?" "Yes," I said. "It matters to me." She sighed, looked at the scooter. "Crit offered to buy the parts from you 3 months ago. He knew you'd never sell it, but I thought about leaving then, about telling you the truth, but you kept giving, kept trying, so I stayed." "Why?" I asked. She met my eyes. "Because it was easier. Because you made me feel safe. Because I didn't have to worry about rent or food or anything. You took care of everything. I loved you," I said. She smiled. Sad, small. "I know, but I never loved you, Lawrence. I'm sorry. I tried, but I didn't." She walked over to the workbench, picked up the blue helmet I'd bought her, the one she'd said was perfect. She held it for a second, then set it back down. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said. Then she walked out. No fight, no tears, just gone. And I stood there in the garage with the broken scooter and the broken silence, and I realized she was right. I had destroyed the wrong thing. The scooter wasn't the problem. I was. I spent the next week cleaning up. Tom and Hank came by, saw the mess, didn't ask questions, just helped me load the parts into Tom's truck. We took it to a scrapyard on the edge of town. Got $2,000, maybe a little more, a fraction of what I'd put in. The guy at the yard looked at me like he knew there was a story there, but he didn't ask, just counted out the bills and watched us drive away. I moved out of the garage, rented a smaller place closer to the city. 1 room, a bed, a chair, a desk. That's all I needed. I stopped going to the cafe, deleted Sasiwan's number. Didn't block her, just erased her, like she'd erased me. My expat friends checked in, asked if I was okay. I told them I was fine. They knew I was lying, but they let me lie. That's what friends do. Slowly, I started to rebuild. Not the scooter, myself. I'd wake up at 5, make coffee, sit by the window and watch the city come alive. I started walking more. Temples, markets, places I'd never bothered to see because I'd been too focused on the scooter, on her, on filling the space Linda left behind. I realized I wasn't angry at Sassiwan. Not really. She did what she had to do, survived, used what was available. I couldn't blame her for that. I was angry at myself, for believing that love could be bought, that loneliness could be fixed with gifts and projects and desperate attempts at connection, for thinking I could replace 40 years of real love with a few months of borrowed affection. Linda and I had built something real. It took time, trust, patience. With Sassiwan, I'd tried to skip all that, tried to buy my way to the end without doing the work, and that's not how love works. That's how dependency works. And I'd confused the two. I thought about going home, back to Calgary, but what was there? Cold, memories, the same empty house I'd run from. No, I wasn't ready for that. Maybe I never would be. Thailand wasn't perfect, but it was mine, my choice, my mess, my chance to figure out who I was without Linda, without the scooter, without Sasiwan, just me, 67 years old, starting over. Again. One evening, I sat down at the desk in my little room, pulled out a piece of paper, started writing, not to Sassiwan, to myself. I wrote about the scooter, about the money, about the jealousy and the rage and the destruction. I wrote about Linda, how much I missed her, how much I still loved her, how I thought moving to Thailand would fix the hole she left behind. But you can't fix a hole. You can only learn to live with it, to carry it, to let it be part of you without letting it define you. I wrote about how I let loneliness make me desperate, how I gave everything hoping someone would love me back, how I built a scooter thinking it would make me whole. But things don't make you whole. People don't make you whole. You have to do that yourself. And it's hard, and it hurts, and some days you fail, but you keep trying, because what else is there? I wrote that I wasn't broken, not completely, that I still had my hands, my mornings, my memories of Linda, my mistakes with Sassiwan, my ruined scooter and my bruised pride and my stupid, stubborn heart that kept beating even when I wanted it to stop. I wrote that maybe, someday, I'd build something again, not for someone else, not to fill a void, just because I wanted to. Because creation is how I make sense of the world, how I prove I'm still here, still alive, still capable of something beautiful. I folded the letter, tucked it in the desk drawer, put on my shoes, walked outside. The sun was setting over the mountains. Chiang Mai was painted gold and orange and pink. Monks walked by in their robes. Motorbikes buzzed past. Street vendors called out in Thai. Tourists laughed. Locals argued. Life moved forward whether I was ready or not. And I realized I was okay with that. Not happy, not healed, but okay. And okay was enough. For now, I walked to a night market, bought pad see ew from a vendor who smiled at me like she'd seen me before. Maybe she had. I sat on a plastic stool and ate, watched people pass, couples, families, solo travelers, everyone carrying their own stories, their own scars, their own reasons for being here. And I thought about how we're all just trying to survive, to connect, to matter. Some of us do it better than others. Some of us destroy $40,000 scooters because we don't know how to feel our feelings without breaking something. But we keep going. We clean up the mess. We start over. We learn, or we don't. But we keep going. Because that's what you do. That's what Linda would have wanted. That's what I owed myself. Not revenge, not redemption, just the quiet, painful work of becoming someone I could live with again. Someone who didn't need a scooter or a woman or a new country to prove he still mattered. Someone who mattered to himself. That's the hardest rebuild of all. But I had time. I had my hands. And I had nothing left to lose. So I'd try. One day at a time. One breath at a time. Until maybe, just maybe, I'd find something worth building again. The scooter was gone. Sassiwan was gone. But I was still here, and that had to count for something. It had to, because if it didn't, then what was the point of any of it? What was the point of surviving Linda's death, of moving across the world, of pouring my heart into metal and chrome and desperate hope? There had to be a point, and maybe the point was this, that I tried, that I loved, even if it was the wrong person, that I built something beautiful, even if I destroyed it, that I fell apart, but I'm putting myself back together, slowly, quietly, without an audience, without applause, just me, Lawrence, 67 years old, alone in Chiang Mai, with nothing but time and regret and the faint, stubborn hope that tomorrow might hurt a little less than today. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us get. The chance to keep trying, to keep building, to keep waking up and deciding that today we won't let the grief win. Today we'll walk a little farther, eat a little more, feel a little braver, until one day, without even realizing it, we're okay again. Not the same, never the same, but okay. And okay is where healing starts. I finished my noodles, paid the vendor, walked back to my little room. The streets were quieter now, darker. I climbed the stairs, unlocked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in months, I didn't think about the scooter, didn't think about Sassiwan, didn't think about Linda. I just sat there, breathing, existing, being, and it was enough.